worth it. You can have this feeling anytime you choose.
Առաջին լրատվականը շարունակում է իր աշխատանքը եթերում, ողջույն, տաղավարում այսօր հյուրընկալել եմ Links Dialogue Analyses Research հետազոտական կենտրոնի գործադիր տնօրեն Դենիս Սամութին. Hi Mr. Samut. Thanks for being here with us today. Would you represent a bit the character of your work, what you have been doing in Armenia and since when you have been doing it?
I have been engaged with issues related to the South Caucasus, including Armenia, for a very long time, since the early 1990s. I came to Armenia first time in 1995, very long time ago. I was very young and I was working with young people. Now I'm not young and they are also not young, but they remain, a lot of them, my friends. Essentially, there are two areas of our work. One is to support the peaceful resolution of conflicts. This is an important part of our work and has been constantly over the 25 years that have passed. And the second one is supporting the process of transition, including improvement of relations between the region and Europe. And we have seen also very big steps taken in recent years in this direction, including here in Armenia. I think there's still a lot of work to be done on both issues, but we obviously contribute as much as we can to these two topics.
Okay, so in Armenia you are perceived more a pro-Azerbaijani actor for some reason rather than a pro-Armenian one. Why is that?
Well, I think it is really a question of perception, because it is an issue of what is our role here. My job is not to come to Armenia and just say, oh, I support Armenia's position on Nagorno-Karabakh, on this or that. My job is to actually say the things that nobody wants to say, that are difficult to say. This, some people understand, and some people don't. We are extremely careful to always approach the issues in a very balanced way. And we get criticized by both sides, I can assure you, constantly. It's part of our job, but I never say that, you know, the Armenians are against us or the Azerbaijanis are against us. This is a part of the process of working on such sensitive issues. On the other hand, my message is you should not shoot the messenger. If the message is perhaps not necessarily the one that you want to hear, you need to think about it and not just simply say the messenger is wrong.
Okay. You've been in Armenia, you have visited actually Armenia after the Velvet Revolution for several times already, if I'm not mistaken, right? How would you assess the transformation that the country has overgone during the last year, 1 year period?
I think what we have seen in Armenia is something quite extraordinary. I watched the process of the Velvet Revolution unfold in April and in May of last year. And like many people, particularly outside, we were not really sure how this was going to develop, how it was going to end. But I was impressed by two things. I was impressed, first of all, by the vision and perseverance and consistency of Nikol Pashinyan and his team, the dedication with which they conducted the process. But I was also impressed by the fact that the whole thing happened in such a peaceful way, in such a civilized way, elegant way, if you want.
In a velvet way.
I think this has helped a lot to the image of Armenia in the outside world. And I obviously, like many other people outside, watch with interest the developments as they are unfolding, and hope that we will not be disappointed in the same way that the Armenian people hope that they will not be disappointed.
We do. In the beginnings of the 2000s, I think you have been working in the direction of bringing together some Armenian and Azerbaijani political actors and diplomats for talks in a hope to nudge the conflict towards its resolution softly. Sure. Right? From inside somehow.
Sure.
How do you think Armenia has benefited from this kind of tactics throughout 2000, if at all?
Well, the process went through different phases. Between 2001 and 2008, we facilitated something called the South Caucasus Parliamentary Initiative, which was a parliamentary dialogue process involving the parliaments of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. This process is overall assessed as having been very useful. It enabled, at the time, the members of parliament of the three countries to share views on a number of issues. We had some very, very constructive and very serious meetings discussing important issues, and we even had a number of agreed documents, including a report that was articulated by the members of parliament and experts from the three parliaments on possible cooperation in areas of environment, banking, and transport, taking into account the conflicts that existed, but also understanding that things can happen in a step-by-step way to improve the situation. So I think this process was useful. Since then, we have had dozens and dozens of other meetings, not in this structured framework, but in other frameworks, with the participation of Armenians and Azerbaijanis. And I think the general feeling is that these meetings do make a difference. We, however, need to be realistic. On their own, they cannot change the reality. They can change the reality only as part of a process that is much wider and that is involving the decision makers. So when you bring people from different sides in the conflict divide together, you are creating the right mood music, if you want, for other things to happen.
Okay. You have agreed that there have been dramatic changes in Armenia during the last 1 year, which also couldn't help but affect the Artsakh conflict resolution approaches and the framework of it, yes. Right? So in the past, the authorities in both countries have been quite similar in their essence, at least. Both Armenia and Azerbaijan were ruled by dictators who grabbed the power by rigging the vote and have never enjoyed popularity in both countries. Anyways, the situation has changed drastically, as we have already pointed it out in Armenia, and the new authorities have a completely different status and worldview. In this case, can we consider that non-existing institutional memory of the new government officials regarding the events and the arrangements of the negotiation process, and their not being privy to the negotiation process, as an advantage? Doesn't it take off the actual burden of those arrangements that were on the table of negotiations of the two dictatorships? What do you think?
Well, you articulated the question in an interesting way. I will answer the core question. The core question is, we have new people in the government in Armenia, and they were not part of the negotiating process. Mm-hmm. This negotiating process was very close and very restricted. We know this. We have criticized this fact before, that only 2 or 3 people on both sides actually knew what was going on. But we have a new reality. The issue of institutional memory, this is a problem not only in this situation. I can assure you that there are also other situations where governments or international organizations lose their institutional memory.
But is it a problem or an advantage, actually?
Well,
right, in this case at least.
It can be a disadvantage if you start saying things that have already been said 100 times and have been found to be not important or not useful. So of course, if every time there's a change in government in one place or the other place, people say we'll have to start from square one because we don't know what happened. This is not helpful. Because we know this process is not a short process.
Obviously.
It's a long process. And so I think the lesson learned here is that on both sides there is a need to widen the process and also to ensure that there are well-entrenched institutional capacities. But I think there is one angle to your question which is different, which is a new approach rather than simply because there is no institutional memory. I think even if there was institutional memory, the new government is made up of different people who have a different understanding of the world and also who are more modern in their approach. And so for sure, they, in any case, would be looking at what new approach can be taken to move in the direction of resolving what is a very difficult problem.
Okay, so we've agreed that the government also is a legitimate one, something we didn't have since the early 90s, we can tell. But what some experts point out regarding the Artsakh conflict resolution at least is the non-existence of the negotiations agenda right now. That's why I was asking the question before. Do you have that impression as well?
You're asking about an agenda?
Yeah, about the non-existent agenda. Some experts at least point out that there is a non-existence of the agenda.
Well, there's no existing agenda because there isn't even a conflict resolution process. Okay, we have in the framework of the Minsk group contacts between the sides. If you look back, based on what the co-chair have told us in the past publicly, and what the governments of the two sides have said publicly, then we can see that what was being discussed for a very long time was really conflict management. Okay. How to manage the situation on the ground.
Not the conflict resolution.
To make sure that people don't carry on being killed, that there are not escalations, etc., etc. What we have seen in the last year is an extremely important development because we have seen the situation on the line of contact calming down. There are still incidents, and even one incident is one incident too many, so I'm not saying it's a perfect situation. But if we compare what was a year ago with what is now, we can see that there is now a very calm situation. Now, this creates the right conditions for then the framework of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chair to start focusing on the more tangible issues related to how to resolve this conflict and how to bring peace. And peace is not a luxury. I sometimes hear some of the discussions around this in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, where people seem to think that peace is a luxury. Peace is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And it is right that every government, as a first priority, needs to think, how can I bring peace to the region where my country is located? With peace is also safety and security. It's equally important. You cannot have peace unless people feel safe and secure. So balancing these two things, peace with safety and security, this is the challenge ahead.
The governments from both sides have been interacting quite actively during the last couple of months at least. Nikol Pashinyan and Aliyev have been meeting a couple of times, 3 times at least. And while in Iran, Nikol Pashinyan has announced that there will take place a meeting of him and Ilham Aliyev soon as well, a new one, but with no agenda. Isn't this a bit disturbing, what do you think, having no agenda while meeting the president of the Azerbaijan, at this stage at least?
I think the agenda will have to be agreed, and somebody has to agree the agenda before the agenda can be discussed. So it's a question, it's just a reflection of how bad the situation has been.
Okay.
That the 2 leaders need to spend time thinking about the agenda and talking about the agenda before they actually start implementing and discussing the agenda. Let us not be out of reality. Let us be extremely realistic. This situation in terms of the negotiations on the Nagorno-Karabakh issue for many years was in a very bad state. And what has happened in the last year has been a little improvement, but it doesn't mean that at the moment we have the conditions that can lead to a solution of this problem. We're very far away from this. But at least it seems from these meetings that have taken place between the leaders of the 2 countries that there is an understanding that we and they, to be more precise, need to move to the next step in the discussions. I watch with interest how this is discussed in Azerbaijan and Armenia. We're in Armenia, let me talk about Armenia. I think there has been a little bit of hysteria here about regarding these meetings between Aliyev and Pashinyan. You know, people are saying, oh, there's some conspiracy, some hidden plan. When I look at what has been said and what has happened, you have to say this was just one little small symbolic step to try to say, let's see if we can do something. Nobody has proposed anything. There's nothing new on the table. Nobody has agreed anything for sure. And yet we get this extraordinary reaction. And I am a bit puzzled with this because if there had been something substantial and there was a reaction to something substantial, that I can understand. But when all that has been, you know, 3 largely symbolic short meetings where the 2 leaders who need to negotiate this started to get to know each other a little bit better and to understand what they need from each other. I think everybody needs to calm down a little bit and wait. I'm not saying that people should not have an opinion on when there is something tangible on the table. But when there is nothing on the table, this is all speculation.
Don't you think it was a little bit more twisted by media, actually? Because it's not always that the media represents the opinion of the population, not necessarily.
Well, let me not criticize the media, because...
not in this specific case only.
But what I want to say is that the media has a responsibility. Okay, the media has a responsibility to contribute to the discussion. It has a responsibility to scrutinize, but sensationalism for the sake of sensationalism does not help anyone. And of course, we have a problem in our world today, not in Armenia only, not in Europe only, all over the world. This is the problem of fake news. And fake news is not something, it's not a question that somebody has an opinion and I disagree with an opinion. It's a question where somebody is putting a false story on purpose out there. And if somebody does that, you have to ask why. Who is doing this and why?
What are the possible development scenarios in the Artsakh conflict resolution process, taking into account the fact that the Madrid principles for a peaceful settlement of the Artsakh conflict are not on the table anymore, according to the press secretary of Prime Minister Pashinyan, although we are to continue to work within the framework of the OSCE Minsk Group principles?
Let's start from the last one. Okay. So clearly, there is a framework, the framework of the OSCE Minsk Group and the 3 co-chair countries. I think there's consensus in the international community that the format needs to remain the same, not least because if you want to change the format, you're going to need to have everybody agreeing, and then everybody will have a different opinion. So the format is likely to remain the same.
Armenia has confirmed it.
Yes.
That it's going to stay
Absolutely.
the same.
And I think, I don't think that the other side would want to change the format now. But the format does not mean that new things cannot be introduced. The co-chair may come up with different ways in which they can take the discussions forward. And in my view, one of the things that they need to think about is how to involve more people in the process at different levels, not necessarily everybody in the same level, but widening the participants of the peace process, and then as soon as possible move to a concrete agenda. The points that you make about the agenda are very valid. Of course, if we sit here and just chat, about things, we can talk for 2 hours, but there will be no sense.
Yeah. Nothing will happen.
So, for results to happen, there needs to be a more structured approach. But I want to emphasize, people should not underestimate how difficult the situation was, and still is, and the journey that needs to be made in this process. Some people, I heard this in a couple of places, had the impression that, well, if Pashinyan and Aliyev can agree, we can solve this problem in 6 weeks. Well, we can't. Okay. No one can. This is a problem that has taken a long time to fester and will take a long time to solve. But the fact that it takes a long time, the fact that there will be phases and processes and ups and downs, doesn't mean that one should not start. If we look at Northern Ireland, we have a peace process there. There has been a peace agreement now, which has worked very well, generally, for 20 years. Yet, the problem is not resolved completely. There are many issues that are still on the table. There are many political crises that happen. And in this story as well, there will be ups and downs. There will be good moments and bad moments. But at least if we're moving in the right direction, then
we're getting closer to the resolution at least.
The biggest problem in the South Caucasus somehow can in the future be resolved.
Okay. So what are your plans now? What kind of activities are you willing to involve yourself in, to get involved yourself in here in Armenia? And how are they to contribute to the conflict resolution process?
For the last year and a half, we have worked on a report on how we can develop confidence-building measures to support the peace process. Confidence-building measures are not an alternative to a peace process, but they are necessary to ensure that a peace process can develop and can survive the different ups and downs, as I said, that are inevitable and that will happen. In December of last year, we published this report, which I have to say was also prepared with a group of experts from Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I'm happy to say that we had a lot of positive reactions to this report so far, and we are now trying to see how we can implement some of these ideas in practice. We are part of a much larger effort. The international community wants to support Armenia and Azerbaijan in this journey towards peace. And okay, here again, there are many conspiracy theories. People say, they have their own agenda, and well, some may have not. But I think that there is a genuine feeling, at least in Europe, I know this because I speak to European politicians and members of parliament in the European Parliament and so on. There's a genuine desire that we need to contribute for the resolution of this conflict, because the South Caucasus is part of Europe. This is part of our continent. We have a responsibility, an obligation even, to see what we can do to help to support to resolve this problem. I think this international support needs to be seen positively, but in the end, it is the governments of Armenia and Azerbaijan, the people of Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Azerbaijanis and Armenians everywhere, not only in Armenia and Azerbaijan, that are the main actors, and who have to be satisfied with the peace process, and who have to make this peace process work.
Okay, thank you so much. Իսկ ես հեռուստադիտողին հիշեցնեմ, որ մենք զրուցում էինք Links Dialogue Analysis Research հետազոտական կենտրոնի գործադիր տնօրեն Դենիս Սամոթի հետ։ Շարունակեք հետևել օրվա իրադարձություններին առաջին լրատվականի եթերում։